Flavius Josephus. Do y'all remember him? He's not in the Bible. But he is a well-known historian in the first century. And his writing, we get a lot of things about. He has quite a bit in there about Jesus. He was a writer, a historian for the Romans. So he wrote that the amount of lambs sacrificed on Passover in 4 BC would have exceeded 250,000. Now, remember, if you remember back in the book of Exodus, it taught on the original Passover. Do you recall? Every household had to get a lamb, right? Every household got a lamb and offered that lamb, sacrificed that lamb. Well, the priests were only able to sacrifice about 18,000 at the temple. If you were sacrificing a lamb at your house, you had to take it to the temple, and what would happen is the priest would sacrifice the lamb for you, and then they would give you the meat to take it home and consume what you were supposed to for the meal. Well, they could only do 18,000. And the reason they could only do 18,000 was because you had to offer that lamb between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock on that day. So you only had a 2-hour window. And I mean, buddy, it would have been something to behold as fast as this is going to do 18,000. All hands were on deck during this. Well, so what would happen is 18,000 is not going to be enough for everybody in Israel. So they would approve lambs, and the families would do this throughout the land. They would do this on their own. Okay, my point is not the Passover. My point is not the other. What my point is, they had to have, for just temple use, vast flocks of sheep. Right? When we've told this story, and I guess I've been guilty of it myself, is I just kind of thought that there was just right near where the stable was, there was a kind of a isolated flock out there, but there wouldn't have been. There would have been sheep all over the place. It says that there were shepherds, plural. It doesn't say how many. We have in our mind, again, because of the nativity scene, I'd like to meet the person who created the first nativity scene and explain to them, we need to get some things right in here because it has affected the way that we think about Christmas. It's affected, well, no, I'm not getting to that. That's next week. So we have a few shepherds showing up. Do you realize there could have been hundreds of shepherds that showed up? Not 3, not 2, and by the way, I don't think I mentioned this. The flocks that were particularly set aside or particularly used, particularly bred, particularly certified for temple use would have had priest shepherds over them. They would have been the shepherds, would have been members of the priesthood. And they would, when they saw a lamb that was born that had potential, they didn't want the lamb to be damaged, so they would take the lamb and set it in one of the mangers, and they would wrap it in cloth to help protect the lamb, to keep it from breaking a leg, to give it support so that it wouldn't develop any blemishes. Does that sound familiar? So, when it says that there were shepherds abiding their flock, the reason that that's unusual is most shepherds would not have been in the field this time of year with them. However, priest shepherds would have been, because they would have been all over the place in this area. There would have been sheep everywhere. Now, upon looking at this further, it would not surprise me if there were not a lot of shepherds that showed up. not just them appearing. We think of a flock here as being, 20 to 50 sheep. 20 to 50 sheep is not going to supply the temple with the. Now, you understand, they also ate and used them for their clothing and stuff. Sheep were really important to their society. So, it's very likely that a whole lot of shepherds showed up. Now, we probably had the other ones that were kind of lower class, but it's also the priest shepherds would have shown up to this. And the priest shepherds, when they saw that baby lying in a manger, wrapped in swaddling clothes, they would have made the connection. They would have, this is what we do with the lambs. Well, isn't Jesus called the Lamb of God? It's interesting that the Latin word for manger means to feed or to give bread. Well, Jesus is also known as the bread of life. So the other shepherds, they may not have made the connection, but the priest shepherds, this would have been quite a sign to them, to have come in there and found a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. Now, in Israel, it wouldn't have been unusual to find a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes. That was in their culture at that time. That was something that was actually it was common to do that, and it was just done for support. Babies when they've just been born, it's stressful. It's stressful on the mother, but it's also stressful on the baby. So they would wrap the child to help protect the baby. Nowadays when somebody hands you a baby, what's the thing they say to you? Support his head. Support his head. That's when somebody hands you and you put your hand behind the head of the baby to be able to, because their neck muscles aren't strong enough yet to do that. So you have to do that. You have to support them. You just don't pick them up like a rag doll. You have to support them. Well, they would wrap them in swaddling clothes to help give them that support. So the shepherds show up, and there is symbolism all over what's going on here. When they show up, here is a babe lying in the place that they feed the sheep, or it's also what they use where they would put the lambs when they wrapped the ones that they were prepared, that they had brought out for sacrifice. When they had selected one that, I think this one's got potential, they would put it in that manger and wrap it. So the symbolism is great here. They would have seen that. And here's a babe in a manger, just like a lamb that would have been being prepared for sacrifice in the temple. Here was this baby wrapped in swaddling clothes in a manger, being prepared for sacrifice years on down the road.